Welcome back to Pure Michigan Sports. Christian Peck-Dimit, Alex Deimel, episode 21. The state of Michigan sports.
Oh,
Not the greatest this week. You
it
look
is right
back to
now.
Saturday, you look back to this weekend. Not perfect, but right now, as we sit, the Tigers are tied 1-1 with the Guardians, thanks to Kerry Bonds. And damn it, if we're not riding pretty damn high on this podcast right now.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And that was again, it take everything that happened in Houston last week and put it to the side for a second. You are facing a division rival in the ALDS. This is a team that has made the playoffs how many times in the past few years, has been the face of the AL Central since the Tigers really went to shit 10 years ago. And this was really the big worry of a series, especially these first two games. You knew you really needed to get a win under Scooble. You knew that he would do the job, but you didn't know about the offense. And the offense was not there at all for the first 8 innings of the game. And it was incredibly frustrating. You had a couple, nice hits here and there. You had the, Jahan double down the line where he gets thrown out like in, it's you're I guess making contact and it's not turning out to be what you want. And then a man that could not be more due to have a moment in the playoffs hits a 3-run moon bomb into right to completely shut up the entire city of Cleveland. And if Scooble didn't already do that, which I don't know how he already didn't, when they were booing it, a friend of mine put it perfectly. It could have been a strike right down the middle, and Guardians fans were going to be booing. It didn't matter what the call was. And you saw him, get off. And to be frank, if you have any skill at lip reading, which I don't think I'm the best at it, but I think it was pretty clear that you saw Scooble saying to Cleveland, "Shut the fuck up," because he was dealing. You weren't going to stop him. All that was needed was a little bit of offensive juice. And you had those huge double plays to bail Scooble out a couple times. Obviously, he was great as per usual. He got out of a couple jams. It's those moments where you're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting until the last second that, although they are so concerning as a fan to watch, it makes it so much better when it finally happens at the perfect moment. And that has been the defining, I guess, key to this to this team's success, where it has been not consistent offense. It's been offense at the right time. You saw it with Andy Ibanez in Houston. I know I just said put that aside for a second, but that's exactly how that game came about. And you saw it today. You saw it in every game down the stretch when, the last 2 months. So this team proved that they could hang. However, today was great. We got to talk about Saturday. Today's Monday. Pitching chaos is not going to work every time. It's not. You do have to step back and say, hey, there are obvious risks to throwing a full bullpen game, especially against a team that has some hitters. Like, there's a reason Cleveland's here. They have a very good offense. Yes, they got shut down by the Cy Young Award winner. Pitching chaos is not going to work every single time, and that is something that, unfortunately, you're going to have those rough games. I think it was expected that Cleveland was going to take one. Now, going back into Wednesday, Thursday, here's my question. Obviously, you can't rely on another carry 3-run bomb in the top of the ninth. You can't rely on a walk-off because you're going to want to have, your Jason Foley or your Bo Brisky going in with a lead and confident on the mound, because there is a distinct difference in the energy and the confidence. You can even see it watching this team when a closer takes the mound with a lead in the top of the ninth. Their entire demeanor changes. The entire team's demeanor changes. And that is what is going to be the key going into these next few games. And it's great that we're going to have at least 2 games in Detroit. I will be there on Thursday. I could not be more excited about it. The one worry I still do have is consistent offense. It is great to have it at that right moment, but it is not something that just can be relied on every day, especially with a closer Like, and I'm never going to even try to get his last name right. I should know it by now, but I refuse to get to know it because I can't stand him because of what he's done to our team in the past few years. This is not a team that, is going to just collapse after one loss, even if it's the Tigers. They're going to come out swinging, and their pitchers, metaphorically speaking, are going to come out swinging. This is not a team to be messed with necessarily or looked down upon. So you're going to need more consistent offense. You're going to need your pitching to be as tight as possible. But today they showed they could do it.
Hey, we've talked about it before. A win is a win, right? No matter what way you get it. And Alex, you beat me to the pessimism here because this wasn't a pretty win. You can talk about how well the defenses played because this was a spectacular defensive game to watch. And I think right in there is actually a key to this game. Everybody is going to talk about what the Tigers did to Class A and that carry bomb, and they should talk about it. It's massive. Carry bonds and that hit were huge for the city, for the series. But I think people are going to forget the two maybe most important plays of the game outside of that, which were turning two behind Scoobs to end the fifth in the sixth, because those plays were simply massive. And maybe you win the game because of them just as much as you win the game because of Carey coming in and hitting that 3-run bomb.
Absolutely. And
But you,
I do think a huge point of that, and I do need to get ahead of this. I owe Trey Sweeney a huge apology. I am kind of shocked that and appalled at, a past version of myself that I referred to him as a white Javier Baez. I think that would
forgot
have been
about
in a
that.
blog done around the trade deadline. Um, Even Jack Flaherty knows we won the damn trade. If you looked at his Twitter and you saw the shaking hands emoji, he knows we won that trade. And I mean, look where the Dodgers are right now. They're
Mm.
doing so poorly that their fans are throwing stuff at the Padres. So I do owe him a major apology. I mean, it's not only just that, but to as a young, not the team as itself is so young, but especially
Yeah.
it's not only his first big league experience, his first big league season, but also his first playoff experience. And
Yeah.
he is coming in, he's turning two so quick. He's getting after pop flies. He's not afraid to go into the outfield. He's not afraid to call guys off. He is doing just about everything everything he's being asked to do. Offense, it could be there a little bit more, but you could say that about anyone right now, except for Carey.
Except for Carey. I think that is just a larger point. We both mentioned it very briefly there, but the defense in this game, really by both teams, was spectacular. It was super, super fun to watch. Obviously, anytime a
Hold
future
on.
Cy Young winner is on the mound, it's great. But
You're telling me that ball didn't hit the ground? Can we talk about that for a second?
I am telling you that ball didn't hit the ground. In my heart of hearts, I think that's a catch. I really do. I think that
Okay.
they
Is
were
there
aided by
any
the
way
fact that
there if you're watching this,
we'll
pause
throw it.
this and go look at that clip and tell me that there is not a distinct moment where that ball makes contact with the grass. I get they can't overturn it because there's not enough evidence or whatever bullshit excuse they use for not overturning calls nowadays. But for the love of God, if you have two eyes, that ball hit the ground.
It's common in sports now to just lean on that, which is it's the call made on the field. You need clear and convincing evidence to overturn it. I think the Guardians were aided by that fact, but I don't know.
I
I
do
think
think it
that's
hit.
a catch.
I do. Yeah. I don't know. I think it hit the ground. My big concern is that it really goes back to those moments. You can't rely on those moments going your way every time. And it is one of
No,
those
and you
where rationally, like, yes, I in my heart of hearts, I disagree. I think the ball hit the ground. Even so, like when that happens and you're sitting there, I don't know if anyone caught it, but it pans back, and I know there were only two outs. But when you're God, who even hit that ball? Was that Ibanez? I'm completely flaking now. I've had so much adrenaline rushing through me the past little bit. Whoever hit that ball was just standing between first and second and got tagged out.
Mm,
That's a live ball. You at
yeah.
least need to treat it like a live ball. It's those moments that you cannot afford and that do kind of scare me with such a young playoff team.
And that's the thing. You're whether for better or for worse, you can talk about as a point of it being exciting when you see people listing why they're on the Tigers bandwagon. They're doing it with this much of a payroll. They're doing it with this young of a team. You also have to look at it as, yeah, it's the youngest team left in baseball, and you're going to have moments like that. But you're also going to have moments like, I think it was Parker Meadows, just all 6'5" of him reaching up to save what would have been an extra base hit off that wall. That was
Yeah,
just as spectacular of a grab, whether or not you think Kwan's grab really was just that, a catch. Uh, but this was all in all a fun win. I think if you look a little bit deeper, if you look at the 1 in 13, or excuse me, 1 4 13 that this team is batting when there are runners in scoring position, you get a little bit eked out when you look at what the Tigers are going to have to do to fill in the pitching around Scoobs. You get a little bit eked out, but I think for the time being, you bask in the win and you look at 1,000-foot view at, yes, you had to get the win when Scoobs was on the mound, but at the same time, you also, going into this series, what did we say? I think it was Alex who often hits the nail on the head. I think I've said that a million times on this podcast.
it's your phrase. We'll go with it.
You needed to grab one in Cleveland.
Yes,
You needed to. And that's what you
absolutely.
did. And you can look at, well, we're not doing this well, we're not doing this well. And those things are true. And those things need to be addressed going in to Detroit. But you did what you needed to do, right?
Absolutely.
You got
Absolutely.
the win with Scoobs. You got a win in Cleveland. It's even going back home. And you put a beating on not only their best closer, not only the best part of their team, which is their bullpen, but also on the best closer in baseball. You got to just be feeling pretty good right now if you're a Tiger or a Tigers fan.
Absolutely. And there are in all sports, and we talked about a little this a little bit last week. In all sports, there are there's a mixture of a win is a win is a win is a win, or gosh, like that was an ugly win. I don't know how I'm feeling. Like there are times where you're not as
Look at the
confident about a
fine
win.
print. Yeah.
We could have been getting no hit the entire game and come out with that result. That is a definition win is a win game. Because you're right, you needed to get one in Cleveland. You needed to have, especially the second one, you needed to have momentum going home, going back to Detroit, knowing the energy is going to be high, knowing that this is the first home playoff game, I think, since I was in like fourth grade.
It's
And
crazy. It
for
really is.
those, for those who are counting, I am a fifth year senior in college. So you can do the math. Um, I think it's so important to have that momentum to keep that energy going, like we've said a million times, with a young team. Um, and what I truthfully am so excited for is sports fans around the world have not seen, either on television or live or however you want to mention it, what Detroit sports and what the city is like when one of their teams is good. I still remember being at game 4 of that 2012 ALCS when we beat the Yankees. Now, mind you, I was in 4th grade, like I've said, and tiny, but I still remember all you could see was the ball in the air, and as soon as it hit a certain point, you couldn't see anything, you could only hear. And the noise just gives you goosebumps. And I know you could probably say that about any playoff team. But this is a city that has been down for the past few years because of the pride that it puts in its sports teams and its franchises. And I could not be more excited for the world to see what the city of Detroit is like during playoffs, when they have the juice, when the going gets going, and especially after what hopefully will be a home playoff win.
You've got to remember, And I think people outside, everyone in Detroit knows that, right? And everyone,
Oh yeah.
who's a rival, a Cleveland fan or Milwaukee or somewhere in Ohio, they all know Detroit struggles. And everyone, I think, at large as a sports fan looks at Detroit and they laugh at the Pistons and they think, oh, and 16 Lions, ha ha ha. But I think a lot of people don't put into perspective the decade of the 2010s from 2010 all the way up to the end of 2019. Detroit, its area professional sports teams, the Wings, the Pistons, the Lions, who did I miss? The Tigers, were the losingest area of pro sports teams, period.
Ever.
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 Any decade, any area, the losingest. They did the most losing. They did it at the highest percentage of their games. That is incredible for people of Detroit and their fans. It's incredibly sad. But at the same time, you look and you say, the Lions are on fire right now, not only this year, but last year as well. The Tigers are the best story in baseball, period. You've got a lot to cheer for. The Wings are on the come up. The Pistons will write them off for now. But damn it, if you don't look at Detroit as a city that can grab onto any little seed of something good and find a way to just get behind it big time, I mean, you got to just feel good for the city.
Absolutely. And I will say I often for those or to those that know me best, I'm often kind of um cast as a bit of an obnoxious sports fan, and I'll accept that title and everything that comes with it because it's not exactly a lie. But what people who write that or kind of throw that term around so loosely don't understand is the pain and the sorrow. Like we were talking about it earlier today. Um, Baseball is one of those sports. It's let's talk. It's not for everybody. Before the pitch clock, I can understand where someone's going to look at it and call it boring, especially if you don't understand how it works, you don't understand like the strategy or the technique or how it
If you
actually
can't
functions as a game,
appreciate good pitching or anything but homers, as I think a lot of casual fans do,
or just
it's easy to
idiots.
call it
I'm going to call them idiots. Um,
fine, but it's easy to call it. You're right.
well, and but it's not even just that. What the argument that was made today, and one I think is truthfully clear, it is the hardest sport to watch when your team is as pathetic and sorry as the Tigers have been for the last decade. It is it, it's your heart stings. There is no happiness. Sorry, let me rephrase. There is a small part of happiness, and that is being that tickets are cheap. That's
Facts.
it.
That's so facts.
And the fact that I've never been happy to see something cost $100 before today, because that meant that this team was back. That this team was back to its winning ways. It was back to the era of, primetime Miggy when we had Prince Fielder, Austin Jackson. Just I literally, as we've been in the playoffs, I've been thinking back to that year and thinking about the absolute studs on that roster. I mean, you had Austin Jackson, Torrey Hunter, even I'm even going to call Omar Infante a stud. He wasn't like a star of that team, but he
Verlander.
he
The
was a
pitching is
dog.
crazy.
And you have Vmart, JD, Miggy, legends of the game. And the what makes this team so much more exciting, and again, believe it or not, I'm being an optimist about the Tigers right now, is this team is doing this so young. And all of them haven't even come close to hitting their prime. We'll see if Torque hits his prime. But, you're Scooble. This is just the beginning. Trey Sweeney, Jace Young, Colt Keith, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter. This is
Jackson Joe.
just the beginning. And that's what makes this so much better. Is
It
knowing
does.
that this is not a team that was just thrown together on a limb This was not just a bunch of 1-year deals that, it's not what it was at the beginning.
Mm.
And it's transformed into a winning and gritty and energetic culture. Which, again, I can say it over and over, and people that don't get it simply won't get it, but I know that those that do get it that much more.
Detroit, give yourself a pat on the back. It's been a long time, and I think that makes it feel all the better. We've got to take a quick pit stop where I know none of us want to stop, and that's in Ann Arbor, where it was an absolute shit show of football on Saturday night that ended up, as I think many games do, where Vegas, in fact, did know something that you
They
didn't.
always do. They
And,
always
and that
do.
and that was the Huskies taking down Michigan, the unranked Huskies, taking down the number 10 Michigan Wolverines by 10 points. In doing it in a fashion where Michigan really did not look particularly good losing. Kalel Mullins had perhaps his first bad game this season, and the quarterback room came to a head, and the quarterback situation came to a head so much so that Jake Tuttle played the majority of this game. And there was immediate improvement, I think, under center as far as passing the ball went. But it doesn't change the fact that this is the best team I've ever seen have this bad of a quarterback room, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It's spectacularly terrible. Um, but not only that, you watch USC lose this weekend as well, which is a horrible 1-2 punch to take. Not only do the Huskies punch you right in the balls, but then you sort of get an uppercut to the face with the fact that USC, your only really good win on the resume right now, looks significantly worse after a loss to Minnesota. And that results in what probably it should, which is the Wolverines now being 24th in the newest AP poll. Too high, too low? When you saw 24, your reaction?
I'm shocked we're still ranked. And here's kind of my question. When you throw, I get it. You had your Davis Warren time, you had your Alex Ordich time. You want to give Jack Tuttle a shot. Like, he was not some schmo. I think he came in. I want to say he was a 4-star recruit coming in. He might have. I want to say he was a 4-star recruit coming in. He was a Harbaugh guy. My question to you would be, why is this QB experiment happening now,
As opposed to spring game
as
preseason? Is
opposed to
that what you mean?
spring game, as opposed to summer camp? And again, things obviously change. You see that all the time. I mean, I can think back to Tua and Jalen Hurts kind of going back and forth at Alabama between who was the starter and who wasn't. Like, things work at different times. But this seems to be a team that is just struggling to find its QB. And unfortunately, and I've said this a million times, when you're not an Army with the spread offense, when you don't have one of those triple option type schemes, you need a quarterback that can make the right read, make the right throw, and isn't going to, I guess, fumble under pressure. And that's exactly what Jack Tuttle did. And I'm not saying that I expect, a JJ. I think, like, that's his first real experience. It's an away game. It's pretty intense. It's not I guess I agree with you in saying that this is the most talented team I've ever seen without a good quarterback. But at the same time, this team did lose a lot of talent last year. It is still finding itself and what it is. But at what point, if you're Sharon Moore and if you're the staff at Michigan, do you say enough is enough and we need to pick a fucking quarterback and stick with him?
What do you mean? I think that's exactly what they've done. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but this team just has maybe the worst quarterback room of any Power 4 school in America. We talked about it earlier when Warren ultimately got benched. And that was the fact that Alex Orji came in so highly ranked. He came into games multiple times throughout last season and made big time plays. And as talented as he was and is supposed to be, we knew right away the fact that he didn't start from day one, knew that this coaching staff tried to get anything and everything out of him possible. And the reason Alex Orji wasn't the day one starter not only is just that a reason he's bad, but B, it became extremely clear just how bad he was, not only because he wasn't the day one starter, that immediately should set off and did red flags for you to know that he wasn't starting from day one with Davis Warren starting over him. But then it became clear to everyone he's just not that guy. And Davis Warren, I think going back to him in that moment may have been a better decision as opposed to going to Jack Tuttle. What that does for the mental of a senior that you've already started and benched. I don't think you can do that to him to throw him back into the middle of a game like that. But I think you just have a terrible quarterback room. They're all both of them are seniors, the actual quarterbacks, that is Tuttle and Warren. The running back that you pray can make a forward pass every once in a while. Come on, let's be real about this.
I'm just shocked, and again, it's maybe I'm not listening enough, but I think you're the first person to put it so flawlessly. I've heard people call him that running back, but that's exactly what it is. And my thought is you have those two other actual quarterbacks that you mentioned. You've got three others, and you have a guy that everyone was talking about as much as you were talking about JJ when he was a freshman when he came in what's his name? Jaden Davis. When are you
Are
going
you
to go
just
to him?
saying throw in the towel that significantly that you're just going to start Davis and say fuck it?
Well, at this point, if we're not just going to pick if Tuttle's going to be that bad and we're not going to stick with a guy, do you at what that's my question. At what point do you pick a guy and stick with him, or do you let this experiment continue and risk a losing season after winning the fucking national championship?
I think that no matter what happens, it's just good coaching not to stick with the guy. You can't just start Davis Warren and be like, this is our guy. We don't want to shuffle quarterbacks anymore. No matter what happens, we start him. If he throws 12 interceptions on 12 passes, he's going to get benched. Things happen live in games, and Sharon Moore you would hope, makes the best decision in that moment, what he thinks will win football games for them. Then I think you just have to swallow the fact as Michigan fans that the quarterback play is going to be really bad, and that your best hope is a dude that's not really a quarterback, is a dude that people joke about DJU in his ability to throw passes past the line of scrimmage. And I think somehow, for whatever reason, maybe because we won the chip last year, those same people overlook the fact that Alex Orji could only be the player that he was recruited as if we go back to 1937 before the forward pass was invented and put him under center in a triple option. He wouldn't be under center.
Well,
Doesn't matter.
here's my other part to that question though. You're going into Illinois this week or next week, one of the two, right? Next
Bye
week.
and then Illinois.
Next week.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have a bye week. If you're Sharon Moore, you're kind of gonna base a lot on what you see in practice.
Play.
Over these next 2 weeks. Who's getting that first snap then at Illinois, based on what you have seen so far? Are you going back to your non-quarterback quarterback?
That's actually a really good question. To be honest with you, I don't think, and this is sort of skirting the question, so I'll give one in a second. I don't think there's a right answer here. Does that make sense? I don't think that
I think
there's
there's a right
someone.
answer, and I'm going to ride with it. I think go with the future. Don't stick with these Don't stick with these seniors that aren't going to win you shit when you could be developing the next big thing. To go the Harbaugh route. And again, I know our listeners probably think I think he's a god because I've talked about, it's, we're not going to have the same things again. But what he went about, and again, there's no guarantees that if you go that with that system that it's going to go the same way. But think about how it started with JJ, where he and Cade started to kind of split time, and then eventually you kind of figured that JJ was the guy. Look where Cade has taken Iowa. Nowhere.
The promised land.
Nowhere.
Yeah, it's tough.
Why would you continue to start a guy like at this point? That you're not really going anywhere. I know it's technically early in the season, but you're not going anywhere.
The actual answer, and I know it was sort of a hypothetical or a rhetorical question, because I'm leaning your way. I think you make good points there. The answer to that question, whether rhetorical or not, is the same reason that you sort of went back and forth on taking Job up and putting him on your playoff roster, is because the same thing applies right here. You can't just shove this kid that's supposed to be good into the spotlight under center in the middle of a season, in this case in particular, against one of the better defenses in the Big Ten. In fact, a defense that stops the run pretty well and may force you to actually make tough throws and make throws consistently, period. You can't just shove him in there and hope that it works out. And I think you do. There is a risk there of playing with and or messing up the kid's confidence, mentality, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying that takes him off the board because he should be up there. Let's be real. No other option is a good one right now. And Alex may be right. You may see him under center. But
I do think the other point
involved.
to that is maybe not Illinois. You're right. Like they maybe not against a defense like that. But that next week you're hosting Michigan State.
What
Why
happened
not
to
give him,
picking a quarterback and sticking to him?
But that's my overall question. That's overall my point. Is if you're going to continue and do this, why not go all out and actually pick the guy that should be your future? That's my point. Is if we're not going to stick with a guy, if we're not going to pick a guy and say, this is who's talented, right? Or like this is the guy that works the best in our system. This is the guy who's proven it the best in games. Not that any of them have proven anything, but if we're going to go with one, this is the guy who we're going to go to. If you're not going to take that approach, why hasn't he seen a shot yet?
Again, a bit of a rhetorical question, and we'll end it here because I think that's a good point, and I think he's absolutely in play, or his name is up in the air when we talk about going into Illinois next week, who's going to start under center. But it's sort of the same reason I think that you didn't see Alex Orji on day one. Because remember, for like the first 2 weeks, all any Michigan fan wanted to say on Twitter was, "Where's Orji? Where's Orji?" I bawled with him on College Football 25. Why can't he start under center for us? Davis Warren Stakes, throw him in there. Trust that the coaching staff and the 24 people paid millions of dollars to coach these guys and see them practice every single day, looked at the guy that everyone wants to start and looks at the guy that they recruited so hard to get and was supposed to be that talented. Trust that when they say we can't in good conscience start him over Davis Warren, that there's probably a reason for it.
I would hope so. I genuinely hope so. I think you're right. That's probably the perfect spot to kind of put a pin in that conversation. And who knows? Maybe we will see Jaden Davis at some point. Maybe we won't. This is a big week. Not only do we have the Tigers, but the same day as Game 4, we got the Wings. We got the Wings kicking off their season at home against Sidney Crosby and those goddamn Pittsburgh Penguins. Which, and this is what I've kind of avoided saying for a while since we lost Jake Wallman in that trade. the season for me kind of comes down to this. You obviously have offense. You've got one of the best starting lines in the country with Larkin, DeBrincat, and Raymond. The fact that your second line consists of Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko makes any, I don't know, 2018, 2017 NHL fan completely shit their pants. Um, you've got JT who's going to prove to get it done. You've got, whenever Rask decides to come back, well, not decides. I know he can't really control his injury, but you've got Rask and you've got Kopp on that third line. I do expect a much better year out of Andrew Kopp. It was a completely worthless year from him. Not only just points wise, but just overall production. Not enough in his time on the ice. Too many penalty minutes. Got to get that figured out. You've still got Christian Fischer. Obviously, Yzerman trusts him to be kind of one of those, depth chart, plug and go guys. But again, getting into the big thing that my concern is defense and goaltending. Now, I'm not I'm not confident in Steve Yzerman right now, but I still do not understand the Jake Wallman trade. Because now if you're looking at your defensive pairings, you've got Mo and Sherratt at 1, Edvidson and Jeff Petrie at 2, and Mata and Gustafson at 3. I think Gustafson was a good pickup. If we can get the production from him that you saw a few years ago, that'd be great. But you give up Wallman when you still have Jeff Petrie as your number 2 defenseman. The guy that was probably the weakest link on that team last year. There has to be some locker room thing that, we're not going to learn about until he does a podcast interview in 5 years. Maybe he does it with us. Who knows? But that deal still, especially for what the pure lack of a return, made no sense. And that is going to be the biggest X factor is can this team survive losing one of its key defensemen? And can it survive on goaltending that is still a question mark? I'm not convinced that Husso is the guy. And Cam Talbot isn't in his prime anymore. He's old. Has he seen some playoff years in the past few years? Yeah, that's great. It's great to have playoff experience, especially at the goaltending position. But Husso or Talbot go down, and you're bringing up Jack Campbell. I still remember hearing that Swayman and the Bruins were in their contract disputes, and obviously that's been settled. He got his 8x8 or whatever the hell he got. Even though that was a complete shit show of a negotiation. I am shocked he signed because I've never seen someone like completely disrespected by his organization and then just all of a sudden, oh, you're going to still offer me? Okay, cool. That made no sense. And I was hoping, maybe the Wings would make a play for him. Regardless, the big X factor is going to be defense and goaltending. And the reason I say that is because that has, when you went on that 7-game pointless streak that I love to talk about, that was the huge issue, was the defense and our goaltending was relying on 3-goal games, 4-goal games, 5-goal games from our offense and relying that they would help pick up the slack. This is a great offense, but at the same time, it's not as stacked depth-wise as, I don't know, a Colorado or an Edmonton, where you've got Draisaitl as the second-line center. This is a team that, is going to give you offensive production, but you've got to back it up with defense. You've got to have Mo getting down and getting dirty. Jeff Petrie can't get blown by every single power play. He can't. Ben Sherratt's going to have a better year than he did last year. Simon Edvidson is being asked to fill a huge role as a young guy. Well, huge also considering he's like 6'8", but you're asking a lot out of a defense that has not necessarily proved it. And as much as I love to talk about how much I trust the Yzer plan, as much as I am excited for this year, I'm not pressing. It's like we talked about with golf. I'm not necessarily pressing that panic button, but I'm in that kind of wait to see mode with this defense because I don't know that a team with Jeff Petrie on the second line defense can go to the playoffs.
And that was going to be my next question was certainly this team at its ceiling, because you're talking about young guys filling into spots. If they can do just that, the playoffs, I think, certainly well within this team's ceiling. If you had to give a record prediction or a tight record range, how are we feeling about that?
Well, I think it's it's safe to say that this isn't going to be a division winning team. I do think this is a team that is more than capable of claiming a wild card spot. I think it's going to take a good 80, anywhere from 80 to 95 points to do so. And what's going to be huge for this team is if you can get a lot of these games even into overtime and pick up a 1 point here or 1 point there and at least battle these games where you're not all of a sudden chasing down because that was a huge issue with that streak last at the beginning of beginning I guess of this calendar year was it took 1 or 2 goals early and there was no juice and there was no coming back from it was not necessarily tight games. It was just you're getting blown out and you're getting shut out, and that simply cannot happen again. And that's where the biggest contention will lie is, can this team keep in close games? At the same time, we've been talking a lot. It seems to be there seems to be a few different themes with all of these Detroit sports, but one of the ones that we haven't really connected the dots with as much is the young talent. Is this the time where you're going to see Marco Casper? Are you going to see Nate Danielson? Are they going to be able to produce, on the off chance that someone gets hurt or someone isn't performing? If Andrew Kopp has anywhere close to the year as he does last year, I would not be surprised if you see, Carter Mazer or Casper up on that roster. But the question is this a team that is ready to not have a ton of actual NHL experience, but get the job done?
All right, realistic ceiling and floor for you. If you had to look at this season and say, yes, if everything goes perfect, we win every single game we play, or everything goes terrible, we lose
Yeah.
realistically, season win cap, season win floor.
I don't even know if I have a win necessarily because a lot of hockey goes, is about
Yeah,
points and about that point
points
system.
total, or
I guess
playoff
the
finish.
the ceiling for me right now is that third slot in the division, that third seed in the division. This is not a division winning team. The ceiling would be capturing that 3 spot. That I will be ecstatic if that's where we are. If we can make it out of the wild card, this team has nothing left to prove to me. With the roster we have, with everything going, we're not Toronto, we're not Boston. That would be great. The floor is right where we were last year.
I know
That's
you hate that purgatory zone.
and that's why it's the floor. And I'm not saying that because it's what I necessarily want or think. It's because that's the expectation. Is that cannot happen again. The lottery is great. Detroit is not a city that can bank on a lottery. Never has been, never will be. And yes, that's the superstition talking. But this has never been a city, especially the Wings as a franchise, cannot just bank on, if we don't make the playoffs, all right, we'll be in the lottery, we'll be fine.
Look what they've done to the Pistons lately.
That is true. Do you have any kind of? I know we're kind of shifting here, and I know that their season doesn't exactly start this week, but as our resident Pistons expert, how are you feeling?
Yeah, so we're shifting our sports of strength here, and I think that was a great preseason preview. And it's nice to get hockey going again. But the Pistons are not too far behind, just about 2 full weeks away from regular season starting. Preseason started 2 days ago, and there are a couple points to glean from it. But at the end of the day, it's preseason, right? Nobody's playing more than 25 minutes. You love, what getting what you can out of Cade or Jaden Ivey, or how do they work with Duran? How much are they going to split minutes and this and that? But it's the preseason, so whether win or lose or great performance, bad performance, it's all grain of salt for the next, 2 weeks or so. Uh, Cade played really solid. Ron Holland, who's our draft pick this season or this past year, I think gave a lot to like. He's probably the biggest sort of headline from this game, and a guy whose his role really on this team is one that he's going to have to carve out himself. How much and where he's going to play is a little bit of a question mark. Certainly he will play, but I think he's someone that's going to get eased in throughout the season. The other big headline is Jaden Ivey was spectacular in that preseason game, and you blow out the Bucks, who, same as the Pistons, didn't really play anyone. No Bucks starter played more than 17 minutes, and that's just the way the preseason goes. But Ivey looked really good. He looked the two things that we need him to, which is efficient and safe with the basketball. Didn't turn the ball over and shot 6 of 8 from the field, 3 of 3 from the 3-point line. Him as potentially the backup point guard or the backup sort of ball handler role when Cade is off the floor, and Bickerstaff staggering those two's minutes could, I think, be a key to this season. We'll talk a lot more about it next week. We'll give you really what Alex just gave us on the wings, which is a full breakdown. But we've got just one more stop on our Detroit half dozen before we get to our picks of the week. And that's with the Lions, who, of course, had a bye, 3-1 right now. And that record may change pretty soon because you've got a very tough stretch coming up. And we've talked about it a couple times, but you're in Dallas, you're in Minnesota, home for the Titans, and then you're on the road for the Packers and the Texans. 4 games that are going to be incredibly difficult. 4 of those 5, of course, were sort of knocking the Titans out of contention for a very tough opponent. But the Cowboys are coming off a win. The Vikings are, looking like maybe the best team in the league right now. The Texans and Packers speak for themselves. This is a tough stretch, and I think it's one where you have to look ahead and warn yourself. We very well could lose 2 or even 3 of the next 5 games and still be all right, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
We could be good this season. We could play as well as we did against the Seahawks and lose 2 of these games. So
100%.
I think just make sure to try and keep the ship steady, whether it's 5-0 through this or 2-3.
And can you please text me and remind me when I'm going insane when we're losing to do that? Now, what I will say is Dallas as a team does not concern me necessarily. I think we have the talent to hang with Dallas. And it comes down to completely, for whatever reason, actually, not for whatever reason, because of referees and Jerry Jones, totally not a
Bad things
conspiracy theorist.
happen when the Lions
Bad
play
things
in
happen when the
Dallas.
Lions play in Dallas. And I would love nothing more than to kick the shit out of Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones this coming week. It would bring me so much joy.
And that, I think, is the perfect segue into our picks of the week. My first one is my Michigan one. We always do 2 picks, each of us. One, something Michigan related, a Michigan team, a Michigan player, and something not so related. I'm going to start with my Michigan sports team pick of the week. And that is a simple one. Usually I try to get a little bit more creative. We're going simple, punch you in the mouth here. Lions against the spread, baby. Right now it's -3.5. I think if anywhere the line will, I think, get a little bit tighter, it might move down to 2.5. I think they'll probably keep it where it is. -3.5. I like it. I love it. If you want to take money line, do that too. I just have a feeling that Dallas, even though they just beat Pittsburgh, isn't quite all there.
Yeah, I would go with that. And I don't think that Pittsburgh win was a statement win for this Dallas team. Not that Pittsburgh is bad, but when you think about not only the talent on the Cowboys roster, what they're paying that team to compared to what the
exist.
actual production has been. This is not a team that necessarily scares me. It is simply the fact that for whatever reason, Jerry Jones, um, we have struggled when it comes to playing in Dallas for the last, I don't know, decade. So
Yeah,
I
back to
do
2014. So
I
yeah.
do think that's a safe line. Again, it's that one part that concerns me. My Michigan pick this week, we're going hockey. We're starting the season off over 6.5. That first Wings Penguins game.
Oh,
I think you should expect a lot of offense out of this game. Crosby's getting up there, but he's still Sidney Crosby. And this is a Penguins team that also, has a lot of, offense to generate. But this is not a Wings team that's going to, stand down to any Penguins defense, no matter how good the team is. So, um, going with that to start, and then I guess I'll give you my non-Michigan pick, and this is kind of a shocker if you're someone who knows how I gamble. Ole Miss LSU under 64.5.
oh,
I think this Ole Miss defense has been a huge part of their success that has been underrated, even considering the loss to Kentucky.
I was gonna say.
Um, and as great as Ole Miss's offense is, and as bad as LSU's defense is, I don't think this is a game where you're going to just see a necessarily huge shootout as much as you would love to see in an SEC game. I think it is a little bit gritty. I think it does come down to the whoever has the better defense, which is why I'm going with that under.
Actually, you know what? I'm not mad at that. I won't tell you on it, but I think it's an interesting pick. Um, I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to change what I just made. I said -3.5. I'm going to go alternate spread -2.5. If you happen to just want to wait on it and see if the line will shift that way, go for it. I think where I'm actually going to put my money is alt spread -2.5 for the Lions over Dallas. And I'm going to do a second thing, which is cheat a little bit.
Oh boy.
We always record at night and release it the next day right around noon. And we always make sure to say, don't do anything tonight. However, the last leg of a parlay is Cole Reagan's over 6.5 strikeouts. And that is currently going on right now. It's a bet I actively made, and I'm just going to make it my pick of the week because I want that sucker to hit.
Do we know how
And
many
he's at
strikeouts
two.
he has as
He's
of
at
this
two
moment?
right
Because
now.
he's at
The
2 right
live
now.
line is still 6.5, so we're trending that way. I know that's sort of cheating. Promise I won't do it again. But just because it's active right now, I just want to see those. If you make it to the end of this episode and you're still watching or listening, go shit on me or congratulate me in the comments. But that is it for episode 21. We hopped all over the place. We did a lot. We will have a Pistons preview out for next week, and we will have some written previews and some other little things heading into the season up on the Substack. So Pure Michigan Sports everywhere, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Substack. Drop the follow. Until next time, it's been Christian Peck-Dimit and Alex Deimel with Pure Michigan Sports.